Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ask the Theologian on this Wednesday. Very glad you're here and have joined us. Because it's Wednesday, let me remind you that tonight we're doing a little study on Jeroboam, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that tonight's study, First Kings chapter 11, is going to be mostly good. Jeroboam's a good guy when we first meet him. So let's join together for that, and we'll be all ready to go tonight. About 10 after 6. We got a little supper here ahead of time, as you know, and we'll enjoy that, some fellowship, and then we'll get into it. And today we're glad to get into your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. And as promised, let's see, I should always check to make sure I got Biblify up and ready to go. And today I don't, but I soon will as we get there. Biblify.worshify.com, just in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. Great free little resource there that Nathan has created for us. And there, I think I'm all ready to go now. And a happy birthday to my wife. By the way, today is her happy day. And so appreciate all she does. Now to the questions. Let's go to Pastor Mark Bays in Oklahoma. Do you think the false witnesses in Matthew 26 mirror the two witnesses in Revelation chapter 11? Well, Matthew 26, I believe, actually, let's see. Are you referring to, I should have looked at this ahead of time because I am not sure which false witnesses we have in Matthew 26. I am thinking of the false witnesses in Matthew 24. Looking at that real quick. We'll see if Pastor Mark messed up or if I messed up. One of us is messed up here. And I would suspect it's Pastor Mark because I thought I had messed up once, but it turned out I hadn't. Yeah, okay. So that's the problem when you don't read the questions ahead of time. You don't get all that edited. Pastor Mark, maybe there are two false witnesses in Matthew 26, and there probably are. I see Peter denying me and those kind of things happening. So perhaps we'll have to chastise Pastor Mark for getting the wrong chapter, or perhaps he's got the wrong chapter and we'll have to chastise the theologian for not recognizing what he's talking about in Matthew chapter 26. By the way, some of you who are asking a question, when you narrow it down, your host loves it. You know, like in the New Testament, when it talks about love, what do you think about? Well, I'd like to know exactly what you're talking about there. But anyway, to give Pastor Mark a hard time today, we look at it. If we're talking about in Matthew chapter 24, there are many false witnesses that come. And Jesus warns them about the many false witnesses to come. In Revelation chapter 11, you have the two witnesses who speak against the false witnesses. And I would say that other than perhaps some in the time period, I am not sure that there's a connection there. Now, Pastor Bays is teaching through Matthew, so he probably knows what he's talking about, and I don't, because his question was vague. So I'll still put the blame on him. So let's come back around to that question, Pastor Bays. When you get me the specifics, I will get you the answer. How's that? Because I want to make sure I got that right. But let's go to John. I understand his question from West Virginia. What is an elder? Well, you know, you do have, what would it be? In the book of Titus, is it Titus chapter 3, or here's, I want to, this you didn't have to be specific because you weren't asking about a specific place of Scripture, but I do want to find one of the passages with elders in it, and let's go to let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 5. That'll work. 1 Timothy chapter 5. And take a look at the word, and then let's see it. So the other day we were talking about a single pastor or a single elder and multiple elders, and this question was based there. And Paul comes along, say in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 1, and he says, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brethren, the elder women. Now, there, in that particular use of elder, I think he's talking about an old man, I don't know, probably 60 and above. Because I certainly wouldn't want to be put myself in the elder category as a young man like I am. But elder in that case is just someone older. It's respect your elders, as we might say to the children. But that's not what we're talking about in the church, because often elders in the church are young men. As a matter of fact, I would say it is young pastors who are pushing to be an elder. And they want this office of the elder, and they want to make that, say, I'm 26 and I need to be an elder. And I want my fellow 26-year-old buddies, we're all going to be the elders of this church because we have great, great spiritual insight. And so there's a little bit of perhaps a misuse. In Jewish tradition, rabbinical tradition, you could not serve as a rabbi until you were 30 years old. And then it was the older rabbis that really were respected. They were kind of surprised at Jesus at 30 years old. He speaks as one with authority. What's up with this? He's only 30 years old. Tell me about this. Now, let's go to Biblify and turn on Strong's Concordance and come in here. And let's open the sidebar here and look at Strong's Concordance. It wants us to select a word. We're going to select elder right there. Here are the times that it comes up. Let's go ahead and show all of these and take a look over here. Now, when we do, if I can get that where we are, the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now, that sounds like a respected position. I think in the Jewish sense, the elders of the people, it was not really official, the office of an elder. The chief priest was official, but the chief priests and the elders, the respected people, took counsel against Jesus. The elder and the elect lady. Here, the author of 3 John is writing, calling himself an elder, and he probably is there. Ananias the high priest descended with the elders with a certain orator. Again, I think this is respected people. 1 Timothy, rebuke not an elder, chapter 5, verse 1. Straightway the morning the chief priest had a consultation with the elders and the scribes. So then the elders that are among you, I exhort, whom am also an elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. Here, again, that I think you could argue that, hey, you got some old men that have been around for a while. That's who they are. But let's keep on, because I know that evangelicalism and Reformed theology tells us that an elder is ordained. It's a position. Don't you know this? But so far, I don't know that we've found it in Scripture. It came to pass to preach the gospel to the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. That's the Jewish position. The elder unto the well-beloved Gaius. That's 2 John. Again, the author of 2 John still calling himself an elder, and I think he was. I don't think he was lying on that. I don't think he was 26. I think there's an old man writing. Why did the disciples transgress the traditions of the elders, wash not their hands? Again, that's older guys that have been at it a long time. Should go up to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders. Now, by Acts chapter 15, was there an ordained position of an elder, and could a 25-year-old be an elder? I kind of doubt it. Again, I think we're talking about people who have been around the block quite a few times, relatively older because they've got more experience. Let's continue. It is by the elders, for by it the elders obtained a good report. This is Hebrews chapter 11. It has to do with faith. The elder women as mothers, that's just talking about women who are older, not younger. Let's see, before the four beasts and the elders. Okay, you do have these elders in heaven, same word, and the 24 elders, who are they? There's a great debate on who these elders are. Most of it made up, because all it tells us is there were 24 elders there and doesn't tell us who they are, but we'll make it up anyway. Judas goes to the chief priests and the elders, holding the tradition of the elders. He sent them to the elders. As you can see, we go on here, and the elders and the scribes ordain elders in every city. This is Titus chapter 1, verse 5. That probably, let's just go to Titus 1:5. We were at that passage earlier. For this cause I left thee in Crete, that thou shouldest set in order the things that are wanting, and ordain elders. Is he saying ordain some older men? And ordain, by the way, has taken on a modern churchy meaning of its own that I'm not sure was there. I don't know that they had an ordination service and an ordination council at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. They gathered together and they gave an ordination certificate and, of course, a Scofield King James Bible as a memento. I doubt that happened. I suspect ordain was appoint, set them in order, get them going. Go about, find some older men who've been around the block a little bit, who know what's going on, and tell them, hey, would you be in charge here? I think you could argue that you've got an overseer and you've got an elder. An elder is a statesman, an elder is experienced, an elder is wise, and therefore most often an elder is going to be elder. Because it's simply impossible to have a lot of experience if you haven't had time to have a lot of experience. Experience takes a while. So I've been told, the denominational brochure told me that pastor, elder, and bishop were the same thing and used interchangeably. But looking at this, can we say that? Or can we say the overseer, episkopos is the word there, the episkopos is definitely somebody who is given charge of oversight. And then, what if he's young? Is he an elder? No, I'm making the young elders out there mad, but you were kind of self-appointed anyway. But let's go and see what evangelical has to say. Let's say is a bishop and pastor and elder the same? We'll ask the internet. And here is brave artificial intelligence, who says, yes, a bishop, a pastor, and elder are the same office. All three terms refer to the office of in the local congregation and are often used interchangeably in the Protestant denominations. An elder is someone who has been ordained by a bishop to preach and teach, preside at sacraments, administer the church through pastoral guidance, and lead the congregation. Okay, artificial intelligence pulled this from there. It's, by the way, one of the reasons I think me, you, everybody else ought to write and put a lot of stuff on the internet, because artificial intelligence is going to take over and we better feed the monster. Now, the standard answer is yes, absolutely, bishop, pastor, and elder are the same office. I think we ought to do a study and see. I think we ought to question that assumptions. That question. In fact, I am going to go over here and let's see. I'm going to add this. Are bishop, pastor, and elder the same? I've got a series coming up after Easter. I think I'm going to call it Unlearn It. Unlearn It. Things that you need to unlearn if you're going to understand the Bible. And I might put that one in there. I think there's a decent chance, John, that an elder is not only old, there's more to it than being old. Although in some cases, like 1 Timothy 5, there is just talking about old, respecting someone because they are older than you. Doesn't matter if they've earned the respect or anything like that. But within a group setting, an elder is going to be an older man who's got some wise experience. And that is an elder. He may not have a single position, but he's got some wise experience. Remember back in the 70s, when E.F. Hutton speaks? Can you finish the statement, Madison? No, she can't. Okay. Because she doesn't respect her elders. This is the problem. Or she wasn't alive in the 70s to know this. When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. Now, whether E.F. Hutton had a position or not, people said, oh, that's E.F. Hutton over there. E.F. Hutton, he's been around the block a few times. He's done this. He paid for it with blood, sweat, and tears. He knows what's going to win and what's going to lose. Let's listen to E.F. Hutton when he speaks. I think that's an elder. And I think that Christianity, especially Protestant and its Protestant and evangelical forms, have rejected that idea. Fundamentalists, independent fundamentalists, they're not evangelicals, they're not Protestants, and they don't talk about elders much. And if they did, it would be in the use the viewpoint of some older guy who's experienced. He's one of our elders over here. In an independent fundamentalist church, that wouldn't mean he's ordained and they meet the second Sunday of every month. But in most Protestant and evangelical churches, if you did that, he's one of our elders. It means, the church has selected him to be, whatever it is. Mr. Hayes, good to see you. He knows E.F. Hutton, I think we complicated it too much. It's an old guy. That's what it is. And specifically, I think most often an old guy with some knowledge. He's got some ability. He's got some experience. And that is needed in a church in a huge, huge way. And that, I think, could even be just a blessing if churches came and said, hey, we got elders. We want to respect them, these old guys here. And, we also have ordained some leadership in some ways, and we'll give them their role as well. Thanks very much for that. Let's go to Gerard in the Netherlands. He says, may be mistaken, you've not answered my latest question about how the New King James, I thought this was the other, but I'm gonna go with this one. There's two questions from Gerard. How the New King James alters the tense of the verbs in 1 Corinthians 6:11. Let's just pull up the King James here. I am not a fan of the New King James, by the way. And nor would I really be a fan of any attempted revision of the King James, because I think it's a lot easier and safer just to train little boys to put their big boy pants on and how to read it. And then there's no need to change it. And I can train, give me 3 weeks with a third grader, and I can train him to do King James. To modernize the King James, I need 75 great linguists, 2 years, $1 million at minimum, and then I'll probably make mistakes. This is a no-brainer. Take the third graders and train them what ye means, right? Anyway, so I'm not a fan of the New King James for that and a number of other reasons, but that would be the DOA for me, dead on arrival, for any revision. Okay, now 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 11. Such were some of you, but ye are washed, ye are sanctified, you're justified in the name of the Lord Jesus by the Spirit of God. Okay. And New King James, I'm going to have to pull up the other program here to get New King James. And let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 11. And so New King James changes this. I want to see if I can bring this out where you can see it also. Sorry to put such stuff before your eyes, but here we go. Such were some of you, you were washed, you were sanctified. Now, we have talked before about how the King James changes the New King James changes the tense, the verb tenses from the King James. That's a big deal. Now, I think there are some times when the New King James said, oh, no, this is an aorist passive, and therefore it has to be were. But that is shallow linguistics. This is an aorist, and so they just say, therefore we're going to put it into the past tense. You were sanctified. But the problem is, the aorist doesn't mean past tense. And the linguists of the New King James, they're narrowing this down to make the rules of English trump the rules of Greek. And the good linguists of the King James, they looked at this more broadly, and they said, okay, what is it that this Greek is saying? It's saying you are sanctified. You happen to be sanctified right now. And they carried that out. Now, I think that the translators of the New King James, now granted, they're better linguists than I am, but they didn't hold a candle to the King James translators. They need a babysitter. They're not that good, and that's true of any linguist today. And any collection of linguists today. I noticed on a passage, let me see if I can find this. I'll have to go to, I had a discussion the other day, and let's see if we can pull this up, because there was a particular passage in which the Greek had also done this, and let me find it here. Where are we? Somebody on social media argued with me, believe it or not. It's this one, but unfortunately there's 92 comments. And it was 2 Corinthians 3:18, I believe. You all just stay tuned for just a moment. Have some popcorn, something like that. Yeah, okay. Nah, there's just too many comments to find that. But I think it was 2 Corinthians 3:18. I'm gonna look that up. No, that was not it. Sorry about that. What I found in that particular, and it was a very similar to it is in that particular passage. It says you are saved in King James, and in New King James it said you are being saved. And the kindergarten translators at New King James said, yeah, you are being saved because it's the present passive participle. You are being saved. However, again, it was taking a very narrow view of the present passive participle, where they're taking that to say, oh, present passive participle, we've got to have it right now and ongoing, so you are being saved. That's the way it should be. We know this. We know this. Well, that particular present passive participle verb was used about, not even in that verb, actually, just that form in the dative, which is what it was used about, I think, 8 times. It's used 8 times in the New Testament. Do you know that 6 times in the New Testament, they did not say, it's a present passive participle. It has to be right now, ing. But the 2 times that it spoke about salvation, that's what they did. Which is a theological issue. They're not even consistent. King James was consistent all the way through on that when it was a present passive participle. It said, it translated it into the perfect passive, I think is what it would be in the English. And so the problem is that the New King James translators are trying, and this is true with a lot of translators, and this is true with a lot of young Greek guys like me who don't really know their stuff until they go around the block a few times and realize, hey, I'm different than the King James every time. I guess the King James is wrong, wrong, wrong. And then you grow up a little bit and you say, wait a minute, why did those guys always do it so consistently the other way? The problem is they're using a dummy literalism. A dummy literalism is it's like a transliteration. Transliteration, you take an alpha and you make it a B. You take you make it an A. You take a beta, you make it a B. You take a gamma, you make it a C. And just getting it across. But a linguist says, alpha isn't always an A. Beta isn't always a B. There's linguistic issues that we've got to change this. And so the issue is on this that I think if you're shallow in your Greek, you can say, look, present passive participle, there it is, that's what it's supposed to be. King James is wrong. But honestly, you're just showing your ignorance when you do it. That's my feeling on it. So I agree with you on that one, Gerard. Thank you. Very much on that. There's another one I kind of disagree with. Let me go to this one with Gerard. And where did that go? It had to do with Babylon in America, getting Babylon out of America. The article that was there on getting Babylon out of America. Pardon me that I've lost the. I've lost it there. But there was an article, Getting Babylon Out of America, and its premise is the founding fathers were Masons, and the Masons used pagan symbols, and therefore the United States is pagan. And it needs to give up the American dream and be done with it. I don't buy that kind of logic. I think Wednesday is pagan. It was named after Woden. That's why we spell it W-E-D instead of W-E-N like we pronounce it. It's Woden's Day, and therefore Woden's Day is pagan, and therefore we should not even call it Wednesday. We should call it the 4th day of the week. I don't buy the logic. I think the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. I think you look at the United States, and it has done some despicable things and is doing some despicable things. But I think also it's been the greatest gift to the modern world that any nation has had. It saved the modern world many, many times. And, if it wasn't for the values of the United States, you'd be under Hitler today, and under some Hitler regime, or still under Stalinism. So I'm not really all that impressed by 250 years ago, George Washington had an eyeball and a triangle, and therefore everything the man said is absolutely wicked. That's not my line of thinking. Now, somebody prove me wrong, I guess. If the things that the United States is known for and that are our values, if that is Satan worship, then I guess nobody in the world is worshiping God. No nation in the world. I'm just not sure I get it. I kind of look at it like, I don't know. There's a cow over there, and the cow was raised in a field that was owned by a Satanist, and that Satanist, he put that cow out there on his Satanist-owned grass, and therefore, if you eat that cow, you are filled with the devil. Nah, it's a cow. Eat it. Some of our forefathers made grand mistakes. I think one of the good things about the United States is we see them as human. And we're pretty fickle with our politicians. We'll love them one day, hate them the next, because they did something good one day and they did something stupid the next. And so we'll go with that, and we're able to see that. Oh, Mr. Hayes. I always love it when he stops in on the program. I stop in on his every now and then. And he says, are you wearing shorts under the table? You know that somebody just this morning, yes, here we go. They sent me this. Men's short and long sleeve business shirts, $2.99. And here we've got the walk socks, 99 cents. Anyway, she sent it to me and said, here you go, preparing for the spring season now. That obviously came from the 70s, and we hope that style never comes back. Okay, it hasn't yet hit short season. The temperature today is supposed to be decent, but it's been cold. It's been like 0 degrees at night and stuff. So today I have blue jeans on. But soon it will be short season, and you'll be exactly right. I'll have this, and it's the magic of television. Okay, here's the important question. How do you get that beautiful head so shiny? Some people are gifted with a beautiful head. The rest of them God covers up with hair. Just in case anyone's interested, I shave it with a, what do you call it, a safety razor? The kind you screw the thing and you put the blade in there and you put it back in. It has two sides. Is that a double-edged safety razor? I think it is. And the little brush, badger hair brush, and stick it in the soap the old-fashioned way, like a man should shave. You brush it on there and then you just shave it off. I could do it in the dark. And often I'll put a little. My favorite is this is not what you all came for, but Joel asked. There's this olive oil aftershave cream that I've only found in Israel, and I like that. It just takes one little squirt and rub it in. When I don't have that, I just use some kind of lotion that Shelley got me for Christmas. But actually, I don't think it's all that shiny, really. I mean, it's not like glossy. I think it's the lights. That was an important question. Thanks. We're glad Mr. Hayes stopped in. He's got his podcast right before mine and sometimes goes overboard. I mean, long. I never do that. But he sometimes goes long. And then when he does, some of my listeners are late. Back to our questions. Let's go to Marcus, who has told me before where he's from. And I don't remember. But I'm going to hit Marcus's question. Joel says he'd totally wear that outfit. That is this one. I think it's all good except the socks. I'm not wearing pantyhose like that. And those ties, that's a little overboard on the tie. I can go with the shirt and the belt and the shorts, though the shorts are a little short for my style. But I've noticed shorts are getting shorter again. I hope ties are not getting wider, and I hope socks are not getting taller. Someone here said, "Oh, one does need a good-shaped head to get away with no hair." I was worried about that when I first shaved. And my wife, today's her birthday, she did not want me to do it. Although I think she likes it now. But she didn't want me to do it then. She's like, it'll make you look old. And now I look at those old pictures. It's been 10 years ago now. I look at those old pictures when I had hair and I looked old. Because I had this gray little bit of hair around the edge like a raccoon wrapping up my head there, and it just wasn't a good look. So, but I'm pretty convinced that more guys could do the shaved head than think. They're just scared. And if you go ahead and try it, then you can make it. Richard Jordan says Mr. Hayes is wordy. Well, he's the guy that knows. Speaking of the elders, we got to go with him. He's wordy. He's never said that about me. To the question, Marcus. Sorry about this. We're just having some fun today. Marcus says, in understanding the uniqueness of Paul's apostleship from your experience, how have evangelical brothers responded to you? Have they still embraced you while disagreeing? Have they broken fellowship? Is the Pauline dispensational position an issue to divide over in Christian fellowship? I do appreciate so much of what you do, Dr. White, and I learned so much from your insight. Well, thank you. I wonder when Marcus says, I do appreciate so much of what you do, is that like not appreciate other parts of what you do, or is that like, oh, I appreciate so much what you do? I'm gonna take it that way. So I was an evangelical when I discovered the uniqueness of Pauline apostleship and the unique message. Why did I have a master's degree in theology, master of divinity, with my biblical languages that I got, 90 some odd hours of higher education doing, and then I got a doctorate degree, and I had all the whatever hours for that, and I pastored for 20 years at least while all this was taking place, and I didn't know that Paul's apostleship was unique. I didn't know that Paul had a mystery, that Paul shared something and none of my professors, I don't think they even knew it. If they knew it and rejected it, they didn't tell me. And I think even when I hear people, and we're going to talk about this some in our Branson conference on Labor Day weekend, when I hear people going up against right division or, so-called hyper-dispensationalism, I can tell they don't even know what it is. They don't know what they're talking about. They're just against it. because it doesn't go with the denominational brochure. And so as I think of, okay, so I came into recognizing, hey, he really, I mean, it's right there, plain as day. So how have evangelical brothers responded to you? Have they still embraced you while disagreeing? Have they broken fellowship? I would say for the most part, broken fellowship. They're always nice at first. They rarely just argue it. They just go, huh, okay, huh. And then they don't call anymore. They don't even get it. I have tried to talk to some of them about the kingdom. All they know is we're supposed to build it or advance it. There's so much remedial work to get that they don't even know. So they, I would say, break fellowship lightly and slowly. They drift off. You don't hear from them. Oops, sorry. Put the men in shorts up again. They drift off into fellowship. You don't hear from them anymore. I am never invited to speak in any kind of evangelical groups. They're way too scared of that. Even as I was learning this, I began to notice that the denominational higher-ups who used to love me because I would carry their water bucket, they would begin to, don't have him on the committee. No. And they don't say that, of course, but you know, we're not dumb. We know what's going on. So I would say that they broke fellowship, but they never did it in just a blunt kind of way. I've had a few Calvinists break fellowship, and they're blunt. To their credit, they're blunt. But those who disfellowship because of right division issues, they're just silent. And honestly, if there's some of you out there who might be, listening in, I hear every now and then, I'll see someone comment on something I said, and yet, they're never commenting here. So I know they listen in some. Those who are listening in, just go at it, man to man, shall we say, and carry that out directly to let me know, because I think those of you who are evangelicals out there and don't understand the uniqueness of the Pauline dispensation, therefore you don't understand right division. I think it's because you just don't understand where we're coming from. And if you'll sit back a little bit and listen, you'll get it. And I don't think you've got an argument against it. Again, I've listened to some of the debates and some of the sermons that are out there against right division by evangelical, mostly dispensational leaders. Evangelicalism doesn't even know there is any difference at all because they're so steeped in covenant theology. But you get dispensational, run-of-the-mill dispensationalists, and they will at least be against it. They're against right division. But they don't know why they're against it, except that Harry Ironside was against it, and therefore they're against it. And they don't have and the arguments they put out there are such, honestly, dumb arguments. They're straw men. Like, nobody holds that position. Why are you even attacking it? But they never, like in the debates, it's always, I heard one recently, there's this guy who's against right division and this guy who's against right division, and they're going to debate each other on why right division is wrong. They never get somebody who holds right division. And you can invite them all day long. You can challenge them all day long. You can, pay them to come and go through it. They won't do it because they don't know what they're talking about, and they don't want to know what they're talking about. All they know is, I don't do that like that bald-headed guy. No. But they're intellectually bankrupt. And so they break fellowship. And then again, just a few of them will attack. I see more people attacking right division now than I used to. And I think that's because we're growing in numbers. And they recognize this. And they're scared of anything new, and so they're gonna go up against it rather than study it. That is a little bit of a human trait. Probably some things that have been given to me, I was against them at first, and maybe even on this program. And then the more I talked, the more I realized, hey, well, that's a good point right there. It's worthy of further study. But very few. Pastor Bays is with us. He's one that I was able to persuade. We'll get back to his question now because he's come clean, and it is in Matthew chapter 26. We'll get back to that in a moment. But very, very few. You got to catch them young and open. It's easy to find them young. It's just not easy to find them open. And Mr. Bays and I used to, have some conversations. He was struggling with Calvinism. I hate to confess all of his sins there. He was struggling with Calvinism, and so he knew I wasn't a Calvinist, and so he could talk to me about Calvinism. And just looking here, how do I do this? There we go. He probably doesn't want me to show this meme here, but there's the Pastor Bays, now in right division, once in Calvinism. That's how you make a man out of a guy. You get him out of that baby Calvinism kind of stuff, and help him grow up a little bit. All I helped him with was I helped him get out of Calvinism, but the way I helped him get out of Calvinism is through right division. And in right division, it says, okay, and he came around. But most of them, they don't get it. They don't even want to have the conversation. They're closed-minded on it. So I would say broken fellowship. It's a long way around that. Richard Jordan might call me wordy. But I'm in good company, right, Joel? Now, is the question, the heart of the question here, is the Pauline dispensational position an issue to divide over in Christian fellowship? I would say largely yes, depending on what you mean by Christian fellowship. If you mean, well, here's an example right here. I got this little card on my desk, and it's from a church up the road, and they knew that we printed stuff, and from time to time I'll do some outside printing for someone because we have the equipment, and it's usually for right-wing conservative political things that I like, and I hear about them, and I say, hey, if you want that printed, I'll print them for you, really, really, really cheap. And then they say to their pastor, hey, or pastrix, hey, that's the bald-headed guy. He does it. He prints cheap. So I wouldn't agree theologically with that group, but they needed some printing for the church. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. So if that's what you mean by Christian fellowship, all good. If you mean, hey, let's do an Easter sunrise service together. No, thank you. Not going to do it. I don't have the time to unteach my congregation even more things. I was talking about unlearned. I noticed Rudy in Belgium said it's going to be a long series. Yeah, I don't want to add to that. So am I going to do anything theologically of theological importance with them? No, I would divide Christian fellowship over that. And I think that's a good thing. I think Christians used to be able to divide Christian fellowship and keep their Christian fellowship. How's that for chasing your tail? That is to say, yeah, we love the Methodists. Sure, they should stay over there at their Methodist church because we're not Methodists. We're not Presbyterians. We're not Lutherans. We happen to be Baptist, or we happen to be, whatever it is, grace believers, right dividers. And to say we don't have to be ecumenical, it's not even a good thing to be ecumenical. Being ecumenical has not done a single good thing for America or the world. And so we divide. Now, if it comes to working on a pro-life issue, I honestly, if we're just talking pro-life, I don't care if you're Catholic, I don't care if you're a right divider, I don't care if you're a Presbyterian, I don't, whatever it is you are. Let's work together to try to save some baby's life. Now, that kind of Christian fellowship, I'm good with. That you might call that humanitarianism. And if we, from our Christian values that we do share, if we can work on some humanitarian issue, go for it. But I wouldn't be able to sit in a church week after week that didn't rightly divide. I wouldn't want someone teaching in my church that didn't rightly divide unless I brought them in and I would be upfront to say, here's Dr. Wigglejaw, and he disagrees with this, and I want him to present his case, and then he'll go back home to his wrongly dividing church. Yeah, to share a presentation like that, I wouldn't have a problem with it as long as we were upfront about it. But is it a position to divide over Christian fellowship? Yeah, in that sense. Now, would I divide in Christian fellowship with my family who, no, you can't come to Thanksgiving dinner because you don't rightly divide? No, I wouldn't. And probably for me, each one's different. Probably for me, I wouldn't even talk theology over Thanksgiving lunch. I would probably talk about other things. I agree with Shrewsbury, England. People are afraid to talk about dispensationalism. They might be convinced and don't want that. I think, and Stephen there in the Home Bible College, he is a pastor, and so I think he knows this thing. It is frightening, especially for pastors. You take a layman, yeah, okay. But you take a pastor, where am I going to get my next job? If I become a right divider, there's not a big network out there, looking for right dividing pastors. So what am I going to do? And so I think Shrewsbury is right. They might be convinced and they don't want that because that's expensive. Excellent. Thanks, Marcus. I appreciate that very much. And I do want to find the non-Calvinist Pastor Bays here and get back to the question about the two witnesses that I gave Mr. Bays a hard time for. Matthew 26:60. It's probably better off to give the former Calvinist Mr. Bays a hard time than the current rightly dividing non-Calvinist Mr. Bays a hard time, because he's a gun-toting, crazed maniac in a good way. You've got to be careful with those guys. Matthew 26:60, exactly where Mr. Bays said it was. But found none, yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. And at last came two false witnesses. This fellow said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said unto him, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witness against thee? I want to back up. That was verse 60. Let's go ahead and back up 10 verses to Verse 50. Jesus said, "Friend, wherefore art thou come?" They came, laid hands on Jesus, and took him. Behold, one of them, which were Jesus, stretched out his hand. This is the arrest of Jesus in Gethsemane. They said, "Put again thy sword in thy place. Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels?" We touched on this on our last Sunday sermon. How then shall the scriptures be fulfilled, that thus it must be? In the same hour, the multitudes, said Jesus to the multitudes, "Are you come against a thief, swords and staves, for to take me? I sat daily with you, teaching in the temple, and ye laid no hold on me. But all this was done that the scriptures might be fulfilled." Okay, they laid hold him, led him away to Caiaphas. Peter followed afar. The chief priests and the elders and the council sought false witnesses against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At the last came 2 false witnesses and said, "This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple." I hadn't made a connection with that, with the 2 witnesses in Revelation. I think I probably, if I were preaching this, here's what I might do. I might say, we had 2 false witnesses at the trial of Jesus. Now, at the future trial of Jesus, which is going to be a worldwide kind of trial, the world putting Jesus on the witness stand once again, saying, "Jesus, put up or shut up." Then there are going to be 2 true witnesses. At the first trial of Jesus, it ended in his death. At the second trial of Jesus, he is coming back alive. I might make that kind of connection, but other than a comparison, that's about the only connection I would make. And I think that in its strongest sense, you might say, this just happened to be that at last 2 false witnesses came up, and they actually found 2 whose witness agreed, 2 who got their stories together before they came here. And that's about it. It's probably as far as I would strongly go with it to carry that out there. Thanks to the good Pastor Bays, who knew what chapter it was in. Let's go to a new name here, Christopher F. Good to see you. Not sure exactly where you are coming in from, but delight to have you. And again, this didn't come in today. I don't think. I'm running a little bit behind, so I'm not sure that Christopher is with us right here. But if you are, tell me where you're listening from, Christopher. And the question, what's your take on the modern literal version pre-translation of the Byzantine manuscripts? Do you think it would be a useful tool in Bible study? Okay, I kind of touched on that earlier in the previous broadcast. So let's assume we're going from the same underlying text, but get a modern literal version. I honestly, would it be a useful tool in Bible study? Yeah, kind of, but here's what I mean. We already have it. I would go to the Young's Literal Translation. And I do go to the Young's Literal Translation sometimes, and especially when I need to know, hey, I don't understand this word. I looked this word up in the dictionary, and I still don't understand this word that they were using in 1611. Does Robert Young help me out here? Because he took the same text and he translated it literally. What's he got? And is there some insight in that? So that can be a useful Bible study. And I think for the vast majority, they would take something like that, like a Young's Literal Translation, and say, okay, here's a study tool. This is a guide that the King James is not wrong. It's just if you get stuck on something and can't understand and you need a quickie to look at, okay, there it is. Every Thursday night in our Bible study, right there on the screen, we put Young's literal translation just kind of side by side. You can kind of glance over there and you can take a look at it, but it's not our study resource. Sometimes we'll look to undergird our understanding of the King James Version. So I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think sometimes, it may be that someone says, I don't understand what Randy meant. Well, someone else comes along and says, well, what he meant is blah, 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 blah. And I say, yeah, that's what I meant. And the guy says, okay, I got it now. So there is that value in there. But as I mentioned at the beginning, I don't see a need for an everyday modern translation, because there I just think there's too much room for error, too much room to mess it up, and it would be easier to train people how to use it. I think, again, if you teach someone the pronouns, the verb endings, the suffixes, est and est and eth mainly, and then eventually you teach them how to use the Oxford English Dictionary and give them access to that. Those three things right there, if you really want to be advanced, let's go with the Strong's Concordance. A basic student can get it. And I think we shouldn't get that we shouldn't mess it up. We should just educate. Let's not dumb down. Let's go up. I know I'm out of time, but I'm going to go with one more because I'm gonna go with K. I don't know, K with a K at the end also. Cake. Maybe it's cake. We'll call you Cake. It's my wife's birthday. Let's go Cake. Maybe that's correct. Has a question. And Cake, I don't know where you're from or if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but I like your question so much that I'm extending the program today. And I am going to take this question. And I believe that Cake is listening on YouTube. Let me give you a little hint for the future. I happened to catch this one, but a little hint in the future. If you put the word question at the beginning on YouTube, it pops it over into my question box. I got a little software that picks that up. But I happen to catch yours anyway. So we are going to take it because it's important. What is right division and how different is it from dispensationalism? Let me say, first of all, that right division is a form of dispensationalism. It is a sect within dispensationalism. And basically, right division is determining where our dispensation begins. Where in the Scripture did our dispensation begin? If you say our dispensation, let me back up even more. If you say we don't have a dispensation, then you're not a dispensationalist. You're a covenant theologian. That it's always been. Okay, but if you say, no, we live in a dispensation, here's the theology that is directly for us in, let's call it the church. I'd prefer to call it the body of Christ, but let's just use the church. So if our stuff started with Acts chapter 2, then you are with what I would call run-of-the-mill dispensationalists. If you say, no, it wasn't in Acts chapter 2, something certainly happened in Acts chapter 2, no doubt about it, but that wasn't the beginning of the church that we're in, the body of Christ or the dispensation of the grace of God. Our dispensation began somewhere later in Acts, typically in the middle part, chapters 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. If our stuff began then, and to narrow that down even more, with the Apostle Paul. If our stuff began with the Apostle Paul, then those of us who believe that would be me, call ourselves right dividers. It's a name we've taken upon ourselves from 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15, in which we're instructed to study to show thyself approved. And we are to be rightly dividing the word of truth. So it has to do with where that division is of where our doctrine began. Now, it's not saying where did Scripture begin. Scripture begins in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. It's not saying what's inspired. All 66 books of the Bible are inspired. It's not even saying what is profitable. The whole thing is profitable for doctrine, for correction, for training in righteousness, all these things. Because you take, for example, here tonight in our Bible study here, we're studying Jeroboam, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, that's profitable to study. But it is not, we wouldn't take Jeroboam as the purveyor of our doctrine. Even if he had it right, he went way off. But there's a lot of things we can learn from Jeroboam. We can learn about the work of God in the world. We can learn about the history of how it came to the dispensation we're in today, something in the past. We can learn doctrinally where they are. We can see some contrasts, just 1,000 things we can learn from these things. But we would recognize that's not ours. Like Leviticus is not ours. Numbers is not ours. The prophet Malachi is not ours. And then I would say, like Acts chapter 2, verse 48 is not ours. And chapter 4, where they're selling everything, that's not ours. Our stuff began later. And Paul talks about this in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 2, where he says, if you've heard of the dispensation of the grace of God, which is given me to youward. Now, this dispensation of the grace of God given me. A right divider believes that Paul received the information about the dispensation of the grace of God, and therefore Paul is our pattern, Paul is our standard, Paul is our apostle. That is right division. How different is that from dispensationalism? It is dispensationalism. It's a difference in the timing of when our dispensation began from Acts chapter 2 to Acts chapter, let's say, 13. Now, in some areas that doesn't make any difference. For example, all dispensationalists, I'll use that word a little loosely, all dispensationalists would believe in a pre-tribulational, premillennial rapture. So if you went to what I would call a run-of-the-mill dispensational prophecy conference and they were talking about the rapture, they're probably going to get it right. They might use a few scriptures to support their argument that I wouldn't use, but they'll get that right. They'll get the millennial reign right. They might even get the kingdom of God right, depending on who you talk to there. But if you talk about what is Cake supposed to do in her Christian life, how is she supposed to fulfill whatever obligations there are to the Christian life, that's where it would differ. In all that. Both would teach a salvation by grace through faith, not of works. I think the right dividers would teach it with more of a grace basis, with no works involved in it at all. Now, that, by the way, reminds me, I don't have the graphic up, but Labor Day weekend, Branson, Missouri, the Randy White Ministries Bible Conference, our discussion will be right division issues and answers, and we'll look at some of those things and learn all about it, and would love to have you. Now with that, I am most out of time. But I do thank each one of you for joining us. And again, feel free to come and join us tonight if you can do so. And we'll be blessed by your presence. And I'll be back on tomorrow. You can ask a question 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at AskTheTheologian.com. Thanks. God bless.